I'm wrestling the wheel of the anomalous transmission, which is what I've affectionately nicknamed the behemoth satellite truck, that, through a series of questionable life choices and an even more questionable online contest, is now mine. It smells faintly of old gym socks, desperation, and just a hint of what might be ectoplasmic residue. The sky above the usually tranquil cul-de-sac of Primrose Lane is a sickly, bruised green. Not good, not good at all. I'm on the phone with Brenda, my long-suffering, and let's be honest, only ENNO intern, who's probably still in her pajamas. "No, Brenda," I say, trying to keep my voice even as the truck lurches over a speed bump designed for a unicycle. "We are not using the emergency broadcast frequency to announce the winner of the cutest cat in a teacup contest. Yes, I know Mittens is adorable, in a might secretly be a tiny, fluffy deity of chaos kind of way, but the FCC has rules, Brenda. Actual grown-up rules with fines and potential jail time." Brenda's voice, tinny and full of youthful optimism that I vaguely remember possessing sometime last century, crackles back. "But the engagement, Leo. Think of the clicks. Mittens in a teacup could break the internet, or at least our corner of it." "I'm thinking of federal prison, Brenda, or being shut down by men in dark suits who don't appreciate irony. Now, I'm pulling up to the address Karen Clutterbuck sent. Apparently, Mr. Henderson's garden gnomes are, and I quote, aggressively cheerful and violating Section 4, Subclause B, of the HOA's Acceptable Lawn Ornamentation Aesthetics Charter. Thrilling stuff. Peak journalism. I try to parallel park the anomalous transmission, a vehicle roughly the size of a small whale, between a meticulously edged lawn and a minivan that probably has its own HOA-approved color palette. The massive satellite dish on top makes the pristine suburban houses look like doll houses in comparison. It's a subtle middle finger to tasteful neighborhood aesthetics, and I kind of love it for that. That's when I notice it, or rather, don't hear it. The pre-storm test wail of the municipal tornado siren, usually a charming daily feature around here when the weather gets moody, a sort of community-wide brace yourselves, folks, is absent. Instead, there's just the wind, picking up speed, whistling like a bored ghost through the perfectly spaced ornamental pear trees. An unsettling silence where there should be a shriek. Then, my eyes land on the siren pole at the end of the cul-de-sac. Wires, thick as my thumb, are dangling, freshly snipped, like severed metallic spaghetti. A pair of gleaming, heavy-duty garden shears lies discarded at its base, glinting innocently in the weird greenish light. And there she is, Karen Clutterbuck. Mid-50s, I'd guess. Visor set to maximum judgment. A floral apron over a crisp beige pantsuit that screams I mean business, and my business is making your life difficult. She's not looking at the angry sky. She's not looking at the mutilated siren. She's adjusting a tiny, almost invisible keep off the grass sign with surgical precision, her back to me, as if the fate of the entire cul-de-sac hinges on that sign being perfectly perpendicular to the curb. Okay, so Sky's auditioning for a disaster movie. Siren's kaput. And the prime suspect is currently ensuring her turf remains unviolated by rogue blades of invading fescue. This is fine. This is peak NNNO content, actually. Forget the gnomes. This is a scoop. "Excuse me," I call out, trying to project an air of authority I definitely don't feel, especially when my primary mode of transportation looks like it was designed to communicate with Bigfoot. "Ma'am, Karen Clutterbuck." She turns slowly, the kind of turn that's meant to convey she's doing you a massive favor by acknowledging your existence. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, narrow as she takes in the anomalous transmission. Then me, probably cataloging every visible health code violation on my person. "And you are?" Her voice is clipped, precise, like she's addressing a particularly dim-witted garden pest. Leo Maxwell, Neighborhood Nightly News and Oddities. I try a winning smile. It probably looks more like a grimace. You emailed us about, gnome-related aggressions? A small, almost imperceptible smirk plays on her lips. It's the kind of smirk that says, I know something you don't know, and it involves your imminent suffering. Took you long enough. The gnomes have since adopted a mocking posture. It's escalated into a clear case of psychological lawnfare, but never mind that now. She points a perfectly manicured finger, tipped with a blood-red nail that could probably puncture a car tire, at the anomalous transmission. What is that? It's my mobile news unit, I say, a little defensively. It's an eyesore, she declares, as if delivering a verdict from on high. It's lowering property values as we speak. Is it even street legal? I'll need to see your permits, and a detailed environmental impact study. That dish looks like it's interfering with the migratory patterns of the local butterflies. It's fully permitted, I lie, because the truth involving a novelty pet clothing billionaire and a squirrel documentary is a bit much for a Tuesday morning. Look, about those gnomes, maybe later. Did you happen to see who, performed unauthorized maintenance on the town's tornado siren just now? I nod towards the severed wires, the gleaming shears. Karen Clutterbuck doesn't even glance at the pole. Oh, that old thing, she says, her voice dripping with disdain. Such a dreadful racket. Gave me a shocking headache this morning during my transcendental meditation session. It was clearly disrupting my alpha waves, and it was most definitely interfering with the migratory patterns of the local hummingbirds. A clear violation of natural order. Someone, she pauses, adjusting her visor with an air of profound self-satisfaction, had to take a stand. My jaw, which I thought was pretty securely attached to my face, feels like it just unhinged and hit the floor of the truck. The wind rips a nearby "For Sale" sign out of the ground pole, and sends it cartwheeling down the street like a drunken tumbleweed. Karen just tuts. Untidy. Someone should really secure their signage better. It's in the bylaws, you know. Section 7, Paragraph C. I managed to clamber out of the anomalous transmission without tripping over the usual tangle of rogue cables that seem to breed in the footwell. My brain is still trying to process her casual admission of, well, civic sabotage. Wait, I stammer. Did you just say you cut those wires? Karen is now examining a rose bush with the focused intensity of a diamond cutter. I merely restored tranquility to the neighborhood, young man. Those sirens are a menace. All that shrieking, day in, day out, whenever there's a little puff of wind. It's bad for the begonias. Causes them undue stress, you know. They droop. She gestures with a perfectly manicured hand towards a line of pristine, if slightly trembling, begonias that look like they've never experienced a moment of stress in their pampered lives. Stress? I can hear my voice rising a couple of octaves. This is definitely better than the gnome story. Lady, there's a level 3 storm warning out for this entire county. That siren is supposed to warn people about, you know, actual stress. Like their roofs being relocated to the next zip code, or their cars being turned into airborne projectiles. She clicks her tongue. Fear-mongering. It's all a ploy by big weather to sell more umbrellas, or something equally sinister. I read an article on a very reputable website that also exposes the truth about lizard people in government. It also said the specific frequency of those sirens can curdle organic almond-based milk. And I just bought a new carton this morning from the farmer's market. It was artisanal. I take a deep breath and rub my temples. Okay, let's unpack that for a moment. Big weather? Curdled artisanal almond milk? Are those your primary concerns right now? With a sky that looks like it's about to swallow us whole and then spit us out over 3 states. A well-informed citizenry is a prepared citizenry, Karen sniffs, adjusting her floral apron. And a citizenry with uncurdled almond milk is a happy, healthy citizenry. It's probably in the HOA charter somewhere. Page 17, I'd wager, under Promotion of General Well-Being and Beverage Integrity. She actually pats her pocket, as if she might indeed materialize a laminated copy of the sacred text. Her gaze drifts back to my truck, a look of profound suspicion on her face. And I still want to know what that monstrosity is for. Are you selling experimental vacuum cleaners door to door? Because if so, I have a lengthy complaint prepared about the last salesman who tried to upsell me on a self-emptying dustbin. The audacity. It's complicated, I sigh, the understatement of the year. I'm a journalist, sort of. I cover local oddities, community events, lost pets, heated gnome disputes, and now, apparently, acts of domestic siren terrorism motivated by dairy alternatives. Under my breath, I add, and yes, I won the truck in an online contest for most endearingly unsuccessful local news personality. Grand prize was this beauty, a year's supply of slightly off-brand energy drinks that taste vaguely of regret, and a lifetime of existential dread. It used to belong to a ghost hunting show called Spectre Inspectors. They went bankrupt after allegedly mistaking a particularly grumpy badger for a Class 4 poltergeist in a haunted outhouse. The first fat raindrops begin to fall, splattering against the pristine concrete of Karen's driveway. The wind is making the truck sway gently, a metallic groan accompanying each gust. My phone buzzes in my pocket, a flash flood warning for low-lying areas, which, judging by the way the gutter is already starting to overflow, includes Primrose Lane. Right, that's it, I declare, pulling out my phone with a newfound sense of purpose. Or maybe it's just panic. I'm calling the police, and the county emergency services, and possibly a therapist who specializes in counseling traumatized begonias. Karen actually beams. Go right ahead. They'll see I was acting in the community's best interest. Officer Miller knows I'm a pillar of this neighborhood. He relies on my detailed reports about suspicious squirrel activity and improperly sorted recycling bins. A louder rumble of thunder, much closer this time, makes the ground vibrate. Karen glances up, a flicker of something annoyance? Or maybe, just maybe, the first tiny microscopic crack in her cast-iron certainty crosses her face before she smooths it away with the steely resolve of a woman who has faced down rogue dandelions and won. The lights in the nearest house flicker ominously, and then, with a sigh, die. The cul-de-sac is plunged into a deeper, more unsettling gloom. It doesn't take long for a squad car to arrive, its progress somewhat hampered by a large palm frond that has decided to take up residence in the middle of the street. It pulls up, lights off, which I always find more menacing than lights on. Officer Miller, a man whose weary expression suggests he's seen too many Mondays, Tuesdays, and probably a few horrifying amalgamations of both, gets out of the driver's side. Officer Davis, younger, with an earnest face that hasn't yet been completely eroded by the relentless tide of suburban absurdity, emerges from the passenger side, already looking like he's regretting his career choice. Officer Miller lets out a sigh that seems to carry the weight of 1,000 noise complaints. The sound is barely audible over the rising wind. Karen, what is it this time? Did Mr. Henderson's cat look at you disrespectfully again? Because I told you feline insolence isn't technically a prosecutable offense in this county. Officer Miller! Thank goodness you're here! Karen exclaims, her voice a beacon of affronted civic duty. This individual, she gestures at me with the kind of disdain usually reserved for discovering a slug in one's prize-winning lettuce, is operating an unlicensed, oversized, and frankly quite sinister vehicle on a residential street. It's probably leaking hazardous fluids onto my zoysia grass, and he's making wild, unsubstantiated accusations about our community siren, which, by the way, malfunctioned most inconveniently this morning, right when I needed to hear the 7 o'clock migratory bird report. Malfunctioned? I splutter, taking a step forward. She just told me she cut the wires with garden shears because it was upsetting her flowers and curdling her artisanal almond milk. I point dramatically at the shears still lying by the pole like a murder weapon in a very niche Agatha Christie novel. And those look suspiciously like her shears. They probably have property of K. Clutterbuck for aggressive pruning and dispensing of swift justice to overly loud noises engraved on them. Officer Davis, trying to inject a note of calm professionalism into the escalating chaos, turns to me. Sir, could you explain your presence and the purpose of this vehicle? His eyes flick to the anomalous transmission, then back to me, a hint of morbid curiosity dawning in them. I take a deep breath, trying to sound like a responsible member of the press and not a man who communicates primarily with squirrels and an intern named Brenda. Leo Maxwell, NNNO, Neighborhood Nightly News and Oddities. I was here to follow up on an email from Miss Clutterbuck regarding, and I quote, aggressively cheerful garden gnomes engaged in blatant acts of aesthetic terrorism. Standard Tuesday fare for me. Then I found the siren like that, and she confessed, sort of, in a roundabout, begonia-centric way. Officer Miller, to his credit, doesn't even blink at the mention of aggressive gnomes. He walks over to the siren pole, carefully picks up the shears with a gloved hand, and examines them. He then turns his tired gaze on Karen. These yours, Karen? Certainly not, she sniffs, though her eyes dart to the shears for a split second. Anyone could have left them there. A passing rogue gardener, perhaps. Or a disgruntled gnome with opposable thumbs and a vendetta against public safety announcements. They're surprisingly resourceful, you know. The gnomes... The investigation, such as it is, proceeds with Officer Miller bagging the shears as evidence while Officer Davis takes notes in a small, rain-spattered notebook, his expression growing increasingly bewildered with each of Karen's pronouncements. The rain is heavier now, driven by a wind that's starting to sound less like a whistle and more like an angry banshee. Their police radios crackle with increasingly urgent weather updates, punctuated by bursts of static. Miller? Officer Davis says, his voice tight with a nervousness that's rapidly infecting me too. Dispatch is reporting rotation spotted on radar, about 10 miles out, heading this way. They're issuing a tornado warning. Officer Miller's jaw tightens. He turns back to Karen, his patience visibly evaporating like mist on a hot griddle. Karen, for the last time, did you or did you not cut those wires? Karen draws herself up to her full 5'4" of indignant fury. I am a law-abiding citizen. I uphold the sanctity of our homeowners association bylaws, and those bylaws clearly state that excessive noise pollution, which may or may not be part of a deep-state conspiracy to control our minds via 5G-activated petunias and subliminal messages hidden in public service announcements, is to be mitigated. She practically spits the last word. See? I exclaim, gesturing wildly between Karen and the silent siren. Mitigated? That's a confession. That's legalese for I totally did it and I'm proud of it. All right, Karen, Officer Miller says, his voice flat and devoid of its earlier weary humor. We're going to need a more formal statement from you. Sir, he adds, turning to me, you too, but right now we have a significantly bigger problem. He gestures with his chin towards the bruised, churning sky. We need to warn these people. and we need that siren fixed, now, before this whole cul-de-sac ends up in the land of Oz." A brilliant, blinding flash of lightning illuminates Karen's face as she draws herself up, mouth opening, undoubtedly ready to quote another obscure and entirely irrelevant bylaw about atmospheric disturbances and their impact on property easement rights. The lights in the nearest house, which had bravely flickered back on for a moment, give a final, pathetic pop and die. The world is suddenly darker, windier, and a whole lot more Karen-centric than I'm comfortable with. Officer Davis is a blur of frantic activity. First on his shoulder radio, then his cell phone, trying to get someone, anyone, from county maintenance or the hallowed halls of emergency services to come out and perform a miracle on the brutally silenced siren. The conversation, judging by his increasingly pained expressions, is not going well. "Yes, it's an emergency," Davis practically shouts into his phone, cupping a hand over his ear against the wind's roar. "Code red. Possible tornado imminent." "No, I don't have the siren's serial number. It's on a pole 30 feet in the air, and the access panel is... well, the wires are cut. Like, with shears." "Yes, I understand there's a protocol for requisitioning emergency cherry pickers during heightened atmospheric events, but could we perhaps expedite the... Hello? Hello?" He hung up. I think he put me on hold to consult a flowchart. Officer Miller pinches the bridge of his nose, a gesture I'm starting to identify with on a spiritual level. "Standard," he mutters, his voice tight with resigned frustration. "They're probably having a committee meeting to decide the appropriate font for the imminent danger and possible annihilation memo, and whether it should be double-spaced. So, the cavalry isn't coming. Or if they are, they're currently stuck behind a fallen oak tree on Jefferson Avenue, arguing about Union jurisdiction for emergency tree removal versus emergency siren repair. Karen, meanwhile, has apparently decided the immediate threat isn't the F3 tornado bearing down on us, but a terrified-looking squirrel that's cowering under her prize-winning azalea. She's attempting to coax it out, making little clicking noises and offering it a piece of what looks suspiciously like artisanal, gluten-free cracker. There, little one," she coos. "Auntie Karen will protect you from the nasty wind. We just need to get you to a designated safe space, preferably one with a southern exposure and minimal drafts." The squirrel, to its credit, looks like it would rather take its chances with the tornado. And I'm standing here, next to the anomalous transmission, which is essentially a TV studio on wheels. A really crappy, possibly haunted TV studio that smells faintly of old coffee and desperation, but a TV studio nonetheless. An idea, terrible and brilliant in equal measure, sparks in my brain. "Officers!" I yell over a particularly violent gust that threatens to steal Officer Davis's hat. "My truck! The anomalous transmission! It's got a surprisingly powerful PA system, and I can usually tap into the National Weather Service live feed with the satellite dish. It's not as ear-splitting as the official siren, obviously, but I could drive around, broadcast the warnings directly. It's better than nothing, right?" Officer Miller turns to look at my truck, then at me, his expression one of profound skepticism usually reserved for people claiming to have been abducted by Elvis in a UFO. "You're going to announce the apocalypse from that thing?" he asks, gesturing vaguely at the satellite dish, which is currently collecting a small assortment of wind-blown leaves. "What are you going to use for visuals? Interpretive dance depicting barometric pressure changes?" "Hey," I protest, a little wounded. "It's got a surprisingly decent audio output, when it's not possessed by the spirit of a grumpy 70s game show host anyway. And I'm a professional announcer. Person. Mostly. I once did the live play-by-play for a regional pie-eating contest that went into triple overtime due to a dispute over crust integrity. I can handle a little tornado." Karen, having abandoned her squirrel-whispering efforts, the squirrel, displaying remarkable common sense, made a break for the nearest oak tree and is now probably halfway to Canada, marches over. "Absolutely not," she declares, hands on her hips. "You are not projecting your subliminal messages and your bad vibes all over this neighborhood. I have sensitive electronics. My smart thermostat will probably have a meltdown, and my wind chimes are finely tuned to the natural frequencies of the earth. You'll disrupt their harmonic convergence and probably summon a plague of locusts." Officer Davis, giving up on convincing county maintenance that a tornado is, in fact, an actual emergency, starts dialing through a list of approved emergency electrical contractors. "Yes, Sparks and Rec?" he says into his phone, his voice tight. "This is Officer Davis, Primrose County Police. We have a code Brown at the Primrose Lane Municipal Siren. Yes, Brown, it's bad. Very, very bad. Can you get someone out here ASAP? The sky is currently the color of a diseased avocado, and we're expecting vigorous wind conditions." I, meanwhile, galvanized by my own semi-brilliant idea and a healthy dose of adrenaline-fueled panic, start flipping switches inside the anomalous transmission. A series of worrying pops, a distinct fizzing sound from somewhere under the console, and then the opening bars of a cheesy 70s game show theme. "Come on down. You're the next contestant on Guess That Price." Blast out of the external PA system at a volume that could probably wake the dead, or at least seriously annoy them. I slam a large, red, ominously unlabeled button. Silence, blessed silence, returns, apart from the howling wind and Karen, who is clutching her chest and gasping. "My aura! He scrambled my aura!" Officer Miller just stares at the truck, then at me, then back at the truck, his expression unreadable but probably not complimentary. A battered white van, emblazoned with a crudely painted lightning bolt, and the words, "Sparks and Rec, we get a charge out of your shorts." The last word clearly a hasty, hand-painted correction over something far more anatomically suggestive. Skids to a halt with a screech of protesting brakes, narrowly avoiding Karen's prize-winning, and now thoroughly terrified, begonias. Two figures hop out. The first, Gus, is 50-something, built like a retired Greco-Roman wrestler, with a tool belt that looks like it weighs more than I do, and an expression that says he's seen it all, fixed most of it, and is deeply unimpressed by the rest. The second, Ray, is early 20s, sporting a faded t-shirt that proclaims, "I pause my game for electrical emergencies, sometimes," and a look of perpetual, slightly bewildered enthusiasm. Gus takes in the scene. The two increasingly stressed cops, the agitated woman in the floral apron who looks like she's about to start quoting scripture, or HOA bylaws, or both. My bizarre satellite truck that's probably giving off questionable energy signatures, and the sky, which now resembles a badly bruised plum. He lets out a low whistle. "All right," he grunts, his voice like gravel rolling downhill. "Who ordered the disaster movie with a side of crazy? And which one of you geniuses tried to give this siren a haircut?" He eyes the dangling wires with a professional, if weary, disdain. Sheesh, looks like Edward Scissorhands had a real bad day with his topiary shears. Officer Miller, clearly past the point of polite introductions, jerks a thumb at Karen. "Short version. She cut him." Then he gestures vaguely at me and the anomalous transmission. "Long version. Involves begonias, curdled almond milk, this guy's mobile paranormal investigation unit, and possibly the Illuminati. Can you fix it before we all blow away to Nebraska?" Ray, however, isn't looking at the siren. His gaze is fixed, with an almost reverent awe, on the anomalous transmission. "Whoa," he breathes, his eyes wide. "Is that a vintage Raytheon Q-band uplink? With a modified signal booster and what looks like Is that a custom-built ectoplasmic interference filter? Awesome! Are you guys actual storm chasers? Or are you here for the, you know, he lowers his voice conspiratorially. The thing they say lives in Henderson's koi pond. Part-time on the storm chasing, I say, trying to sound casual. Mostly I chase stories about suspiciously intelligent pigeons and competitive jam-making contests. And no comment on Henderson's koi pond. My lawyers have advised me against it. Can you guys get that siren screaming again before we all start screaming in a distinctly non-warning related fashion? Karen, naturally, can't resist inserting herself into the proceedings. She marches up to Gus, thrusting a small, floral print notepad and a tiny, glittery pen at him. Before you touch anything, she announces, her voice ringing with authority, I require a detailed, itemized estimate of all proposed work, proof of your current liability insurance, 3 notarized references, preferably from within a 5-mile radius of Primrose Lane, and a sworn affidavit that none of your tools have been in contact with non-organic glitter or any products tested on animals. My hydrangeas are vegan. Gus slowly turns his head and fixes Officer Miller with a deadpan stare. Is she part of the payment plan? Because if so, my rates just went up. Considerably. Consider her an environmental hazard you have to work around, Officer Miller grunts back. Like asbestos, or a really persistent flock of angry geese. Gus and Ray, to their credit, get to work with a surprising amount of efficiency, pulling out an impressive array of tools, a battered aluminum ladder, and a shared look of profound resignation. Karen, predictably, hovers nearby, offering a running commentary of unsolicited advice and dire warnings. Are you sure that wire is supposed to be blue? She asks Ray, who is halfway up the ladder, wrestling with a tangled mess of connections. Blue is a very aggressive color, you know. It might agitate the circuitry. Perhaps a soothing lavender would be more conducive to harmonious electrical flow. I have some organic lavender spray in my purse, if you think it would help. She then, helpfully, points with a rusty garden trowel she seems to have materialized from thin air, nearly taking Ray's eye out in the process. Ma'am, Ray says, his voice strained. With all due respect, I've been doing this since I was 16. I think I know my blues from my lavenders. And please, for the love of all that is holy, step away from the ladder with the pointy garden implement. Gus, meanwhile, is muttering to himself at the base of the pole. Should have stayed in bed. Could be re-watching that documentary on competitive cheese rolling. Much less stressful. And fewer angry women with trowels. While the electrical drama unfolds, I'm having my own technical difficulties inside the anomalous transmission. I'm desperately trying to patch the National Weather Service audio through my PA system, which seems to have developed a mischievous mind of its own since the game show incident. First, a blast of static, then a very loud, very clear, and very enthusiastic voice booms out. And for just 3 easy payments of $19.99, you too can own the amazing Veggie Slicer Supreme. It slices, it dices. It even makes julienne fries that will astonish your friends and confound your enemies. I slam a button, my face burning. Wrong feed, wrong feed! Seriously, who presets a ghost hunting truck to QVC? Next, a snippet of what sounds like profoundly mournful whale song, followed by a man passionately, and very loudly, arguing in Spanish about a football match that apparently involved a controversial offside call. Okay, note to self. When buying a refurbished ghost hunting truck from a novelty pet clothing billionaire, always check all the preset frequencies on the broadcast equipment. Apparently, the previous occupants, the illustrious Spectre inspectors, were also really into late-night Spanish sports talk radio and finding fantastic deals on kitchen gadgets. And possibly communicating with cetaceans. Back at the siren pole, Gus is now up the ladder, his head and shoulders disappeared into the siren's main control box. Ray is at the bottom, feeding him wires and occasionally ducking as Karen attempts to assist by waving a pair of pruning snips in his general direction. Okay, got the main line reconnected. Power's flowing, so... Junction looks. What in the Sam Hill is this? Gus's muffled voice floats down. He pulls his head out of the box, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He's holding something in his gloved hand, something round, something starchy. Ray, you seeing this? Am I hallucinating, or is this what I think it is? Ray squints up. Is that a potato? Like a russet? Did a bird drop it in there? Gus descends the ladder, holding the offending object out for inspection. Yep, wedged right in the main relay switch. A baked potato by the looks of it. Still warm. He sniffs it. Sour cream and chives, I reckon. Karen, who had been lecturing Officer Davis on the proper technique for repelling negative energy, using strategically placed wind chimes, beams proudly. Oh, that was me, she announces, stepping forward to claim responsibility for the culinary sabotage. I saw on the internet a very well-researched blog about holistic home maintenance, that potatoes are excellent natural insulators and can help to ground rogue electrical surges. It's an old farming trick. My grandmother swore by it for her, butter churn. Kept it from shorting out during thunderstorms. Everyone, me, Officer Miller, Officer Davis, Gus, Ray, just stares at Karen, then at the potato, then back at Karen. The wind howls, ripping a shower of leaves from the nearby oak tree. The first piece of actual debris, a bright pink plastic lawn flamingo from someone's yard, sails past at head height, looking remarkably serene given the circumstances. Gus is holding the baked potato at arm's length, as if it might spontaneously combust or start quoting Shakespeare. Lady, he says, his voice dangerously calm, this isn't a butter churn. This is a high-voltage municipal warning system designed to save lives, not season a side dish. You don't just shove a baked potato in it. What were you planning to do next? Stuff a pork chop in the transformer? Ray, ever the optimist, chimes in. Actually, technically, the moisture content of a potato could create a short if it was in the wrong place, bridging the wrong contacts. But this is just... wow. Points for originality, I guess? And is that bacon bits I see? Karen bristles. It was a Yukon Gold, she corrects him sharply. They're known for their superior conductivity and creamy texture. Obviously, you're not familiar with advanced bioelectrical engineering principles. It's all about harmonizing the root chakra of the electrical grid. Officer Davis, perhaps sensing that a debate on the vibrational merits of different potato varietals was not conducive to surviving an F3 tornado, wisely tries to change the subject, looking pointedly at my truck. So, Mr. Maxwell, he says, his voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. You never really said, how does one actually win a satellite truck? Is it like a lottery? Or did you have to collect 1 million cereal box tops? I sigh, a sound that seems to come from the very depths of my weary soul. The moment of truth, I suppose. Okay, fine. You want the full, unglamorous, slightly humiliating truth? Everyone turns to look at me, even Karen, who momentarily forgets about the potato's root chakra. I entered an online video contest. It was run by a slightly unhinged tech billionaire named Chet Thistlewick, who made his first fortune in developing those singing fish wall plaques, and his second in novelty pet clothing. Think tiny tuxedos for hamsters, that sort of thing. The contest was called America's Most Passionately Obscure Local Media Personality. I continue, warming to my tale of woe. My entry was a 5-part investigative series I did for NNNO, titled The Existential Angst of Squirrels in City Park, a Study in Urban Nuttery. I think I won because my production values were so hilariously terrible, and my on-camera persona so deeply awkward, that Chet Thistlewick, in his infinite, irony-soaked wisdom, found it perversely charming. His words, not mine. The grand prize, I conclude with a flourish of despair, was this truck, the anomalous transmission. It was previously used by that nationally syndicated, critically panned ghost hunting show, Spectre Inspectors, before they were sued into oblivion by a group of very angry, and, as it turned out, very real bikers they'd accused of being phantom highwaymen haunting a truck stop diner in Arizona. Thistlewick bought the truck cheap at a government auction. He said, and I quote, "Give it to someone who appreciates the truly weird, the magnificently mundane, the gloriously god-awful." So now it's mine for a year. Satellite package included, though half the channels are still locked on German polka music marathons and what appear to be alien autopsy documentaries from the late 90s. Karen's eyes widen, not with understanding, but with a dawning, horrified realization that confirms all her worst fears. "A ghost-hunting truck!" she gasps, recoiling as if the anomalous transmission had just sprouted fangs and hissed at her. "Possessed by specters, and run by a squirrel-obsessed madman who probably communicates with them via nut-based telepathy. I knew it! It's emanating negative ions and attracting this unnatural weather. It's probably what made my prize-winning hybrid tea Rose Duchess Penelope develop that suspicious black spot on its lower leaves. It's a vortex of bad horticultural juju." She starts fumbling frantically in her oversized purse, presumably for a vial of holy water, a silver crucifix, or perhaps some organically sourced, ethically harvested sage for smudging. Just then, a miracle, or possibly just a random electronic spasm, I finally get a clear, albeit crackling, feed from the National Weather Service on my PA system. The voice is robotic, calm, and utterly terrifying. "Takun. Tornado warning remains in effect for all of Primrose County and surrounding areas. Doppler radar indicates a large and extremely dangerous tornado located near Pemberton Creek, Oregon, 7 miles west of Primrose Lane, moving east at 30 miles per hour. Seek shelter immediately. This is a life-threatening situation." The PA sputters, coughs, and then dies with a sad, deflating trombone sound effect, wah wah wah, that I am absolutely, positively sure I didn't program into the system. "Oh, come on!" I roar, banging my fist on the console. "Not now, you spectral bucket of bolts. We had a moment there." Meanwhile, back at the Siren, Gus, having carefully removed the Yukon gold offender with a pair of insulated tongs, which he then wiped meticulously on a rag, is making what he hopes are the final adjustments. He nods to Ray. Ray, with the grim determination of a bomb disposal expert, flips a large red switch at the base of the control panel. The Siren gives a pathetic, high-pitched squeak, like a mouse being stepped on, then falls silent again. Gus lets out a string of curses that would make a sailor blush and question his life choices. "Damn it to hell and back. Still nothing. All connections are good, potato surprise aside. What else could it bloody be?" Ray, who has been peering intently into the depths of the control box with a high-powered flashlight, suddenly says, Gus? Remember how you said it looked like Edward Scissorhands had a go at those wires?" "Yeah," Gus grunts, wiping sweat and rain from his brow. "Well," Ray says slowly, "it looks like he had a friend. Edward Hammerhands. Or maybe Edward Sledgehammerhands, because this whole primary relay coil is smashed flatter than a pancake after a steamroller convention." Karen, who has been trying to create a protective salt circle around her zoysia grass, mutters, just loud enough for us all to hear, "Well, it was making a very judgmental humming sound. Very passive-aggressive for a municipal installation." Just as Gus shouts, "That's it then, we're screwed. I need a new Mark 7 relay coil, and the nearest one's in Poughkeepsie, which, Unless one of you has a private jet and a blatant disregard for FAA regulations, we ain't getting today. A piece of someone's roof. A substantial, shingle-covered triangle cartwheels down the street with the grace of a drunken ballerina. Officer Davis points, his voice cracking with something that sounds suspiciously like terror. Funnel cloud, actual funnel cloud. It's on the ground, half a mile out and closing fast. And for the first time that day, Karen Clutterbuck looks genuinely, unequivocally speechless. Which, under the circumstances, is almost as terrifying as the tornado. The distant roar we'd been half ignoring, half attributing to a particularly large fleet of passing cargo planes, is now an immediate, gut-churning growl, like 1,000 angry bears gargling gravel. Debris, small branches, trash cans that have given up the will to live, an entire flock of unaggressively cheerful garden gnomes doing unwilling aerial acrobatics, is starting to skitter and fly with increasing violence. The sky is no longer a bruised plum. It's an angry, swirling vortex of black and sickly green. All units, tornado touchdown confirmed, vicinity Primrose and Elm. Officer Miller bellows into his radio, which is now mostly emitting static that sounds suspiciously like angry bees. Repeat, tornado on the ground. Take immediate cover. Advise all residents to... The rest is lost in a screech of interference. Gus, all thoughts of Poughkeepsie and relay coils forgotten, yanks open the door of his van. Poughkeepsie can wait. My van's insured for hail and minor fender benders, but I'm pretty sure direct hit by airborne Winnebago ain't covered. Where's the nearest basement in this godforsaken suburb? Ray, looking around wildly, his earlier fascination with my truck replaced by a very healthy dose of mortal terror, shouts, "Basements? In Florida? Dude, we're in Kansas. Or, wait, is this Ohio? My geographical awareness is currently being scrambled by impending doom." For the record, we were in a nondescript part of Oklahoma, but now hardly seemed the time for a geography lesson. "Everyone, the anomalous transmission," I yell, my voice barely audible over the wind's symphony of destruction. It's not exactly a hardened NORAD bunker, but it's heavy, it's probably grounded by residual ectoplasm, and it's the best damn chance we've got. Come on, people, move, unless you fancy a one-way trip to Oz. Karen, however, has apparently decided this is her Alamo. She plants her feet, grabs onto a surprisingly flimsy concrete birdbath like it's the mast of a sinking ship, and screeches, "I am not getting into that. That possessed jalopy, it'll steal my dental fillings and implant alien tracking devices in my brain. I'm staying here to protect my property and the sanctity of the HOA covenant against unauthorized wind speeds exceeding 80 miles per hour. There's no time for debate. There's barely time to breathe." Leo, Miller, and a surprisingly agile Gus grab Karen by the arms and waist. She's unexpectedly strong, fueled by righteous indignation and a deep-seated fear of spectral interference, and flailing like a landed carp. "Unhand me, you weather-worshipping heathens!" she shrieks, her voice nearly lost in the wind. "My begonias will form a protective shield. They're drought-resistant and surprisingly resilient against minor atmospheric disturbances." Ray, bless his cotton socks, actually tries to reason with her while simultaneously dodging a flying recycling bin overflowing with what looks like shredded HOA newsletters. "Ma'am, with all due respect, your begonias are not rated for F3 wind speeds. It's basic botany. They're about to become mulch in the next county." Somehow, between the four of us, we managed to half-drag, half-carry a screeching, protesting Karen towards the dubious sanctuary of the anomalous transmission. The birdbath she was clinging to, liberated from its earthly tether, takes flight with surprising grace, soaring over the rooftops like a concrete albatross. I make a mental note to pitch that to Brenda for an NNO segment. Avian architecture, when bird baths take flight. Inside the anomalous transmission, it's a tight squeeze. Chaos reigns. I'm hunched over my console, frantically trying to get any kind of useful signal, or even just a reassuring burst of polka music. Miller and Davis are crammed near the door, barking futilely into their radios. Gus and Ray are wedged near the back, between a stack of what might be ghost-detecting equipment and a crate of suspiciously sticky-looking ecto-containment grenades, probably just repurposed smoke bombs. Both contractors look pale enough to be actual ghosts. Karen is shoved into a corner, attempting to ward off evil spirits, demonic transmissions, and possibly low-flying garden gnomes by brandishing a tube of cherry-flavored lip balm, which she insists is energetically cleansed with positive affirmations and a hint of peppermint. The truck is rocking violently now, groaning and creaking like an old galleon in a hurricane. The sound outside is a deafening, visceral roar, punctuated by the sickening crunch of unseen things being torn apart. A large tree branch, ripped from a nearby oak, scrapes down the side of the truck with a screech of tortured metal that sets my teeth on edge. "It's the 5G!" Karen wails, her eyes wide with terror and vindication. "I told you, and your demonic satellite is amplifying it. My hair is starting to frizz. This is how it starts. First the frizz, then the mind control." Gus, wedged uncomfortably close to a device labeled Portable Ectoplasmic Field Disruptor, manages to grunt. "Lady, if we make it through this alive, I'm personally recommending you for a long-term government research study. On the outer limits of human delusion? Almost got the emergency scanner," I mutter, fiddling with a series of glowing, unlabeled knobs on my console. Just need to bypass the poltergeist filter. I think this was originally designed to block out spectral interference, but it also seems to block out everything else. Aha! The scanner crackles to life, and a calm, almost serene, robotic voice fills the cramped space, detailing the tornado's current path with chilling precision. It is, by an unfortunate coincidence of meteorological bad luck, directly over us. Is that hail?" Ray yelps as something heavy thuds against the roof of the truck with the force of a dropped bowling ball. "It sounds like someone's up there throwing bowling balls at us, or maybe really, really big potatoes." A particularly violent lurch throws everyone against the left side of the truck in a tangle of limbs and surprised yelps. The interior lights, which had been flickering bravely, give one final, pathetic pop and extinguish themselves. The only sound now is the terrifying, all-consuming roar of the tornado, and Karen, who has inexplicably started humming a disturbingly upbeat show tune from Oklahoma at the top of her lungs. It's somehow the scariest thing I've heard all day. Then, as suddenly as it began, the roaring fades. The violent shaking subsides. The only sounds are the steady drumming of rain on the roof, the distant wail of sirens that aren't ours, and Karen, who has segued from Oklahoma into a slightly off-key rendition of Zip-a-dee-doo-dah. The truck is still. After a moment of stunned silence, punctuated only by Karen's surprisingly extensive vocal range, I fumble for the heavy-duty flashlight I keep clipped to the dash. Its beam cuts through the darkness, illuminating a tableau of disheveled, wide-eyed survivors. Everyone seems to be in one piece, albeit slightly rearranged. Slowly, cautiously, Officer Miller pushes open the heavy side door of the anomalous transmission. The scene that greets us is one of utter devastation. Primrose Lane looks like a giant, malevolent toddler had a particularly destructive temper tantrum with a suburban playset. Trees are snapped like matchsticks, their roots clawing at the sky. Fences are gone, transformed into piles of splintered wood. A previously sensible sedan is now resting gracefully on its roof in someone's front yard. Miraculously, the houses themselves are mostly standing, though battered, bruised, and missing significant numbers of shingles and the occasional porch. Karen's prize-winning petunias, the ones she'd been so concerned about, are now a sad, muddy smear across her lawn. Her cherished begonias, the ones that apparently suffered from stress-induced drooping, have achieved liftoff and are nowhere to be seen, possibly having migrated to a less tornado-prone county. The decorative gnomes, both the aggressively cheerful ones and their more stoic brethren, are scattered like fallen soldiers across 3 different properties, some looking surprisingly intact, others tragically dismembered. Officer Miller lets out a low whistle. "Well, that was suboptimal," he says, his voice hoarse. Ray, blinking in the sudden, rain-washed light, stammers, "My ears are ringing. Is that normal? Also, I think I saw a cow fly by. Or maybe it was just a very large, very airborne poodle. Things got a little blurry in there." Karen, however, is not taking in the broader devastation. Her gaze is fixed, with laser-like intensity, on the ruin of her formerly immaculate yard. Her face, streaked with mud and what might be a smear of cherry lip balm, contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated outrage. "This!" she screeches, her voice regaining its former drill sergeant volume. "This is an outrage! This is entirely your fault!" She points a trembling, mud-stained finger directly at me, as if I personally summoned the twister with a satanic incantation and a badly tuned satellite dish. "Your infernal machine and its negative vibrations. You summoned this atmospheric hooliganism, and look what it did to my azaleas. They're traumatized. They'll need years of therapy, and probably some very expensive organic fertilizer." Gus, who has managed to extract himself from behind the ecto-containment grenades and is now brushing leaves and small twigs off his overalls, actually snorts. "Lady, the tornado traumatized your azaleas. And for the record, it was probably the lack of a working town siren that put everyone in considerably more danger, not this kid's mobile ghost hunting disco." Just as Karen is about to launch into another tirade about ion imbalances, disrupted ley lines, and the generally poor quality of modern demonic summoning, a low, hesitant groan comes from the direction of the mangled siren pole. Then, a stutter, a crackle of static, and the newly repaired, and thankfully depotatoed, tornado siren blares triumphantly to life, sounding the official "all clear" signal, albeit a bit weakly and with a slight metallic wheeze. Ray's jaw drops. "Hey, it's working! Gus, you magnificent bastard, you actually fixed it! How?" Gus looks just as stunned as everyone else. I didn't, not really. The relay coil's still smashed flatter than roadkill, unless..." He looks up at the sky, then at the siren, then at the slightly singed baked potato that Ray is now holding like a sacred relic. "Maybe that damn potato really did do something. Or the lightning strike gave it a therapeutic jolt. I'm officially retiring after this. I'm going to go live in a cave, with no electricity, or potatoes." Officer Miller, who now looks approximately 20 years older but also strangely invigorated, turns his steely gaze upon Karen. "Karen," he says, his voice quiet but firm. "Willful destruction of municipal property, reckless endangerment. And I'm pretty sure there's a county ordinance somewhere against the unauthorized weaponization of root vegetables during a severe weather event. We need you to come down to the station, now. And this time leave the gardening advice, the holistic home maintenance tips, and the potatoes at home." Karen draws herself up, her floral apron askew, her visor bent at a jaunty angle. "This is an affront to civic-minded volunteers and proactive community enhancement. I was merely conducting an experiment in alternative safety protocols and advanced bioelectrical grounding techniques. You'll be hearing from my lawyer, and my naturopath, and possibly my spirit guide, Brenda Lee, who is very disappointed in your negative energy. As Miller and Davis, with the gentle but firm demeanor of men who have wrestled particularly stubborn badgers, begin to guide Karen towards their battered squad car, she spots something on the ground near the siren pole. "My prize-winning garden shears," she exclaims, trying to pull away. "They're crucial evidence, and they need to be properly cataloged and stored in a climate-controlled environment. They're heirloom quality, you know. They have a very specific vibrational frequency." With Karen finally, if reluctantly, contained, though still loudly critiquing Officer Davis's driving posture from the back seat of the squad car, the residents of Primrose Lane begin to emerge from their homes, basements, and hastily constructed pillow forts. They're dazed, damp, but mostly, miraculously, unharmed. The focus immediately shifts to checking on neighbors, assessing the damage, and marveling at the sheer audacity of Mother Nature. And somehow, in the midst of this suburban post-apocalypse, I, Leo Maxwell, purveyor of news too weird for mainstream consumption, find myself in an unexpected role. With the official town siren now confirmed to be working, however mysteriously and potato-adjacent its resurrection may have been, the anomalous transmission's PA system, which, to my profound shock and eternal gratitude to the ghost of Chet Thistlewick, is now working flawlessly, the Spanish football commentary and veggie slicer infomercials, replaced by a crisp, clear National Weather Service feed, becomes an unlikely hub of information. "Okay, folks," I announce, my voice echoing slightly across the debris-strewn cul-de-sac. "This is Leo Maxwell from Neighborhood Nightly News and Oddities, broadcasting live, or at least still alive, from what's left of Primrose Lane. Looks like the tornado has moved on, hopefully to bother a less culinarily inclined neighborhood. Primrose Lane took a bit of a beating, but it seems like everyone's okay, which is the main thing. Just a reminder from your friendly local authorities, avoid any downed power lines, check on your elderly or vulnerable neighbors, and if anyone happens to find a slightly singed baked potato with sour cream and chive remnants, Officer Miller would very much like a word. Also, we have unconfirmed but highly intriguing reports that Mr. Henderson's aggressively cheerful garden gnomes have successfully repelled a rogue airborne garden shed. We'll bring you live, on-the-scene updates on that developing story, possibly with gnome interviews, for our NNO Premium subscribers later this evening. People are actually listening. A few even wave, looking vaguely impressed. A small, muddy kid with wide eyes runs up to the truck and hands me a crayon drawing. It depicts the anomalous transmission, with giant laser beams shooting out of its satellite dish, heroically vaporizing a crudely drawn green tornado monster. "You saved us, Mr. Satellite Man," the kid proclaims solemnly. Okay, maybe not saved. More like provided mildly effective, occasionally static-filled informational support from a vehicle previously used to hunt Bigfoot's less ambitious, and possibly imaginary, cousin. But I'll take the win. My heart actually feels a little warm, which is a new and slightly alarming sensation. Gus and Ray, the intrepid electrical contractors, are being hailed as local heroes for their valiant, if potato-interrupted and ultimately mystifying, efforts to restore the siren. Gus claps me on the shoulder, his hand surprisingly gentle for a man who regularly wrestles with high-voltage currents. "Kid," he says, a grudging respect in his gravelly voice. "You're a weird one. Your truck's weirder. But you're all right. If you ever decide to hunt actual ghosts instead of just passive-aggressive garden gnomes, give me a call. I reckon I owe that potato a rematch, and I've got some ideas about weaponizing zucchini." He winks, then hands me a business card that simply reads, "Gus, stuff fixed, no potatoes." Ray, ever the enthusiast, is already trying to get a selfie with the anomalous transmission. "Dude, this is epic! Can I get a shot for my Instapics? #potato-powered siren, #ghost truck adventures, #my boss is gonna kill me for overtime." Just then, my phone, which I thought had drowned in the deluge, buzzes to life. It's Brenda, my intern, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. Leo, you are not going to believe this. The NNNO servers almost crashed. We've had more hits in the last hour than in the entire past year. #PotatoGate is trending. #KarenVistornado is picking up steam. We've got 3 new subscribers, and one of them is from Poughkeepsie. They said they heard about us from a very stressed electrical contractor. The sun, that old celestial show-off, is finally trying to break through the bruised and battered clouds, painting the wreckage of Primrose Lane in hues of orange and apologetic pink. Emergency crews, real ones this time with actual cherry pickers and no discernible fear of potatoes, have fanned out, their flashing lights adding a surreal disco-like quality to the devastation. I'm tired. I'm muddy. I smell faintly of ozone, damp upholstery, and yes, baked potato. I'm trying to pack up the anomalous transmission, a task made more difficult by the fact that a large, plastic pink flamingo seems to have permanently embedded itself in the satellite dish. I'm considering leaving it there. It adds character. I take a moment, leaning against the side of the truck, and look out at Primrose Lane. It's a mess, no doubt about it. But amidst the downed trees and scattered shingles, people are out, helping each other. Chainsaws are buzzing. Neighbors who probably hadn't exchanged more than a curt nod in years are now sharing thermoses of coffee and comparing notes on whose prize-winning petunias traveled the farthest. There's a sense of community, of shared absurdity that wasn't there this morning. So Karen Clutterbuck is currently down at the station, hopefully explaining the socio-botanical implications of stressed begonias and the electrical conductivity of Yukon gold potatoes to a very patient, or heavily sedated, desk sergeant. The town is picking up the pieces, literally and figuratively. The anomalous transmission, against all odds and possibly several known laws of physics and good taste, actually helped. And neighborhood nightly news and oddities. We might just have our first legitimately viral story. Even if it involves a misunderstood root vegetable, an HOA president who communicates with potentially sentient petunias, and a ghost hunting truck with a penchant for polka music. Brenda's already pitching a spin-off series. Cooking with Karen, destructive delicacies and by-law-abiding baked goods. I told her it's too soon. Maybe. For now, I'm just glad everyone's okay. And that the Spectre inspectors, for all their faults and questionable research methodologies, apparently had excellent taste in emergency PA systems, once you get past the demonic presets and the occasional interlude of whale song. Who knew? As I'm about to finally climb into the driver's seat and point the anomalous transmission towards home, or at least towards the nearest car wash that accepts vehicles previously inhabited by paranormal investigators, my phone pings. It's an alert from the NNNO anonymous tip line, a feature I set up mostly in the hope of getting leads on lost cats or particularly interesting local bake sales. Subject: suspiciously organized squirrels, Primrose Lane. The message, from a new, unverified source calling themselves Deep Burrow, reads, "They're rebuilding Karen's gnome barricade, systematically. They look determined, and one of them is holding a tiny laminated rule book. Repeat, a laminated rule book. You might want to investigate. This feels bigger than gnomes." I stare at the message on my phone. Then I look out at the quiet, recovering cul-de-sac, then back at the message. A small, tired smile plays on my lips. Laminated rulebooks. Of course. I sigh, shake my head, and engage the transmission. The anomalous transmission rumbles to life with a familiar, comforting groan. I glance in my rearview mirror. For a split second, I think I see one of Mr. Henderson's aggressively cheerful gnomes wink at me. I blink. It's gone. Probably just the stress. I pull away from the curb, leaving the recovering residents of Primrose Lane to their chainsaws and their newfound, if temporary, sense of community. As I turn the corner, heading towards my next bizarre adventure, the faint, unmistakable sound of oompa music, a lively German polka, somehow begins to leak from the truck's speakers again. Some days you just can't fight the residual weirdness. And honestly, I'm not sure I'd want to.